Hi friends, today I am going to discuss about the different terminologies of inflation. First, inflation. What is inflation? An increase in the general level of prices in an economy that is sustained over a period of time. For example, if the inflation of last month was 5% and rate of inflation in the current month is 6%, it is termed as inflation. Next, coming to disinflation. What is disinflation? The rate of inflation at a slower rate is called disinflation. For example, if the inflation of last month was 6% and rate of inflation in the current month is 5%, it is termed as disinflation. Disinflation must be without an impact on national income and employment. Next, coming to reflation. Here, reflation means deliberate action of government to increase rate of inflation to stimulate the economy. It is usually done to redeem the economy from deflationary situation. What is deflation? When the general level of prices is falling over a period of time is called deflation. The supply of goods are higher than the demand. This deflation reduces the national income and also increases unemployment, hence leads to recession. What are the reasons for the deflation? Decrease in money supply, decrease in demand, increase in supply. Quite opposite to the inflation. Inflation and deflation are the opposite sides of the same coin. Next, coming to lowflation. Persistent deflation leads to lowflation. See here, inflation, an increase in the general level of prices in an economy that is sustained over a period of time. Reflation, it means deliberate action of government to increase the rate of inflation to stimulate the economy. Disinflation, the rate of inflation at a slower rate is called disinflation. Next, deflation, when the general level of prices is falling over a period of time is called deflation. Next, lowflation, persistent deflation leads to lowflation. Next, coming to skewflation. The prices of certain items increases in a much higher proportion than the prices of other item. For example, particular sector like FMCG sector. Next, coming to stagflation. What is stagflation? It is a situation in an economy when inflation and unemployment both are at higher level. When the economy is passing through the cycle of stagnation, that is a long period of low aggregate demand in relation to its productive capacity, and government shuffles with the economic policy, a sudden and temporary price rise is seen in the sum of the goods. Such inflation is also known as stagflation. Stagflation is basically a combination of high inflation and low growth. It is a combination of stagnation and inflation. It happens due to cost push factors. See here, it is a situation of coexistence of stagnation and inflation in an economy. Stagnation means low national income growth and high unemployment rate. See, it happens due to cost push factors. For example, Gulf War, trade war, pandemic situation, geopolitics, hostile neighborhood, and so on. Next, coming to Phillips curve. Phillips curve shows the relationship between the rate of inflation and rate of unemployment. It is having inverse relationship. The curve suggests that lower the inflation, higher the unemployment, and higher the inflation, lower the unemployment. This is about Phillips curve. Next, inflationary gap. What is inflationary gap? The excess of total government spending above the national income is known as inflationary gap. For example, let's say there is a national economy that is producing 10,000 gallons of milk per week, but the aggregate weekly demand for milk is 15,000 gallons. This means there is an inflationary gap of 5,000 gallons of milk per week. The aggregate demand for milk is higher than the full employment real GDP. In practice, an inflationary gap happens when demand for goods and services is greater than production as a result of situations like employment, high government expenditure, and high levels of trade activity. Then the real GDP ends up higher than the potential GDP. There is an inflationary gap. It's called an inflationary gap because the higher real GDP leads to higher level of consumption throughout the economy, increases prices over time. Here, consumers experience higher level of demand for goods and services because there are more funds available throughout the economy. Meanwhile, supply has not caught up with this higher demand. As production levels do not usually increase as quickly as consumer demand does. As a result, prices increase in order to return the market to equilibrium. Next, coming to deflationary gap. The shortfall of total spending of government over the national income creates deflationary gap in the economy. What is the difference between the deflationary gap and the deflation? Deflation means a fall in the price level. Deflationary gap means that the economy is below full capacity and there is low growth. What are the causes of deflationary gap? Fall in aggregate demand due to fall in exports. For example, global recession like that. Next, fall in investment. For example, due to banking collapse and credit crunch like that. Next, fall in consumer spending. That is, for example, higher interest rates, falling wages, and so on. It leads to rising unemployment, low economic growth, low rates of inflation or disinflation. Next, coming to inflation tax or signorage. Inflation erodes the value of money and the people who hold currency suffer in this process. Deficit financing acts like as an income to the government. This is a situation of sustaining government expenditure at the cost of people's income. Signorage occurs when government print money. It refers to the difference between the value of money and the cost of producing it. However, this printing of money can cause inflation. Inflation is like a tax on people who holds money. For example, suppose an investor bought a government bond at fixed rate at 3%. After that, if inflation increases to 7%, then the value of bond will fall by 4%. 4% in real term. Here the government benefits because it will be easier to repay the bond at the end of the term because inflation is reducing its value. See, inflation is always a level to which the government may go for deficit financing. Level of deficit financing is directly reflected by the rate of inflation. It is a situation government expenditure at the cost of people's income. This looks as inflation is working as a tax. So the term inflation tax is also known as signorage. Next, coming to inflation spiral. It is also known as wage price spiral. When wages press, prices up and prices pull wages up. This means the wage price spiral suggests that rising wages increases disposable income, rising the demand for goods and causing prices to rise. Rising prices increase demand for higher wages, which leads to higher production costs and further upward pressure on prices, creating a conceptual spiral. The wage price spiral is an economic term that describes the phenomenon of price increases as a result of higher wages. When workers receive a wage hike, they demand more goods and services, and this causes prices to rise. The wage increase effectively increases general business expenses that are passed on to the consumer as higher prices. Rising prices generate wage demands that in turn shoot up prices, resulting in an endless loop of inflation. Next, coming to inflation accounting. What is inflation accounting? It is a special accounting technique when a firm calculates its profit after adjusting the effects of current level of inflation. This This process is known as inflation accounting. Such profits are the real profit of the firm, which could be compared to a historic rate of inflation. It provides a meaningful and a reliable database, facilitating a realistic and a rational decision making process in the organization. See, when a firm calculates its profits after adjusting the efforts of current level of inflation, this is known as inflation accounting. That is real profits of the firm. Next, coming to inflation premium. What is inflation premium? The bonus brought by inflation to the borrowers is known as inflation premium. Inflation premium refers to the extra compensation demanded by investors for holding an asset sensitive to changes in realized inflation as well as inflation expectations. This is about inflation premium. Thank you, friends. If you like my presentation, please like and subscribe to my channel.